Dark Fantasy, a cycle of stories about Mother Gru. Chapter 1. Frixlot. Long ago, in the vast expanses of the Scandinavian peninsula, in an age when humans were only beginning to master these blessed lands and sought to settle closer to the shores, humped dragons soared proudly between the towering fjords. These creatures were not only powerful and wise, but also fearless, yet they never attacked out of vengeance or whim. Their mission was sacred, to protect the countless islands, the sky, the land, and the cliffs that had belonged since time immemorial to the forces born of the Mother Mountain. The first settlers who inhabited the outskirts of the great mainland were children of nature. Their souls were permeated with a deep harmony with the surrounding world, and they possessed mysterious powers beyond the understanding of ordinary people. Humans called this power magic. To humankind, dragons were objects of fear. Their immense size, their ability to breathe fire, and their sudden attacks on livestock inspired terror. But people did not realize that these attacks were part of a greater plan to protect territories that had always belonged to nature. The dragons guarded places endowed with magical power, forged from the very essence of the Mother Mountain. In their search for better lands for agriculture, humans gradually began to settle near the dense forests that were home to beings far older and wiser than humanity itself. They saw dragons as predators, as enemies who threatened their way of life, and fear of these majestic creatures gave rise among humans to the first dragon hunters. Dragons were nearly invincible. Their skin and scales were as hard as stone, and their flight was astonishing in speed and maneuverability. Yet there was one weakness that made them vulnerable: gold. Its shine and scent lured dragons, bewitched their minds, and stripped them of caution. They lost clarity of thought, focusing solely on their desire to possess the treasure. And it was this weakness that humans chose to exploit in order to defeat their formidable adversaries. Dragons, majestic and mighty beings, appeared somewhat clumsy on land, but once they took to the sky, they were without equal. Their broad wings cut through the air, and the swiftness and grace of their flight were mesmerizing. Most dragons bore grayish scales, adorned with sharp spikes upon their heads, while a black ridge ran along their spines, resembling a jagged mountain crest. These creatures were not merely powerful warriors, they were the only ones who understood the language of all living beings, humans included. Yet despite their wisdom and strength, dragons remained trusting and at times even naive. Dragons chose deep caves as their homes, forming families that remained inseparable throughout their long lives. These families were sacred, for dragons laid eggs only rarely, and each birth was a momentous event. Their eggs were black as obsidian and incredibly durable. The life cycle of dragons lasted over 1,000 years, and thus the knowledge and wisdom of the elders were passed down orally during long conversations by mountain fires. At the heart of their world stood the Mother Mountain, a place of immense power, guarded by all dragons with great reverence. Yet only one among them, the chosen guardian, was permitted to enter this sacred mountain. From time to time, dragons gathered in flocks along the fjords, where they held councils, shared news, and passed on wisdom. The bonds between dragons and the other creatures of the Mother Mountain were deep. Their closest ties were with the forest fae, though they coexisted peacefully with other beings as well. Dragons hunted forest game and fish, but never strayed far from the shores. Their night flights over the sea were not solely for hunting. They listened to the songs of sirens, sometimes even allowing them to travel upon their backs. But with the arrival of humans, everything changed. People claimed ever more territory, settling along the coasts, building villages, and hunting in lands once inhabited by dragons. This gave rise to tension. Humans saw dragons as predators and enemies who stole livestock and posed a danger. Some humans were driven by greed. Knowing of the dragon's weakness for gold, they began to plunder their hoards and steal their eggs. Thus, the war began. Humans set traps with livestock to lure dragons, then killed them with long spears. In response, dragons were forced to defend themselves, sometimes destroying entire settlements. Yet dragons never violated the laws of nature. They killed only for sustenance or protection. Humans, unbound by such limits, acted with greed and cruelty, destroying all that was unlike themselves. The many creatures who inhabited these lands were forced to fight or flee. Sirens drove sailors mad, trolls lured people into caves, and Tussa hid in the forests, yet humans spun terrifying legends about them, accusing them of child abductions and witchcraft. Even the forest fae, who sought peace, gradually retreated, transforming into humans in order to survive. Despite all this, not all humans were cruel. A few fishing settlements on small islands managed to find peace with the local beings. The people there did not trespass upon the territories of dragons and fae, and in return, they were left undisturbed. More than that, the creatures sometimes helped humans. Fae left remedies for the sick, and sirens saved fishermen during storms. In gratitude, people left offerings, berries, wine, or wooden combs, so beloved by the sirens. These settlements became an example of how peace could exist between two worlds. Yet they were only a single ray of light amid the darkness of human greed. There was no love between them, but there was peace. In these small fishing villages, silence and harmony always prevailed, until one day they were shattered by strangers who arrived on great ships. There were few people left in these places. The young sought a better life and departed for the mainland in search of opportunity, leaving behind only elderly parents and a handful of families with small children. Those who remained preserved traditions and were in no hurry to abandon their land. But the strangers brought only destruction. They looted, burned homes, took women away, and killed the elderly and those who resisted. The first to sense the tragedy were the sirens. Their keen senses caught the screams and cries drifting from the shore. Hiding in the waters, they were powerless to help, but when they swam closer, they saw only ashes. The settlement was still smoldering, and the coastline lay scattered with ruins. That evening, gathered upon rocks in the open sea, the sirens sang a song of mourning. The water around them stilled, listening to their sorrowful voices. A young dragon named Friklos flew to them. He hovered above the waves until dozens of eyes turned upward. Bathed in moonlight, the sirens appeared almost ghost-like. Their bodies were covered only by long hair, cascading in waves. Friklos carefully landed on a rocky ledge beside a young siren named Gabriella. His body filled nearly the entire outcrop, and when Gabriella sat upon his paw, wrapping her arms around it, the dragon rumbled softly. He bent his head, touching his snout to her crown, and froze contentedly as she scratched his nose. Her touch calmed him, even when he sneezed involuntarily, nearly sending Gabriella tumbling into the water. "Today's song is very sad," Friklos said, trying to speak softly, though his voice was still deep and faintly menacing. "Yes, Friklos, a tragedy has occurred," the siren replied, her voice trembling. "We are singing for a settlement that has perished." The dragon paused, lost in thought. "What happened?" he asked. "Tell me." Gabriella fell silent for a few seconds, listening to the voices of her sisters. Then she whispered, "Humans, strangers on ships. They took the women and left behind only bodies and blood." Friklos shuddered. His claws dug into the rock, his tail lashed nervously, but remembering the siren perched on his paw, he restrained himself. His massive silhouette looked threatening in the moonlight. Sharp spines along his back reflected silver light, and his eyes gleamed with rage. "Do not go near them again, Gabriella. Humans are dangerous. They destroy everything around them, even themselves. Fighting them is futile. There will always be more." His voice rumbled heavily. Feeling his tension, the siren pressed herself even closer to him. "You will stay with me, won't you? Truly, Friklos, you won't leave me?" she asked, looking into his eyes. "I will stay," the dragon replied. "I will stay with you. I will stay with the Mother Mountain." They remained there until dawn. The sirens sang, and the dragon listened, gazing at the moon. Before returning to the water, Gabriella kissed his nose and whispered softly, "Friklos, help me today." The dragon shook his head. "What must I do?" "They need to be buried. Their souls will not find peace," she said, pressing her cheek against his snout. Friklos sighed heavily and snorted in irritation. "Bury humans? After what they did to your kind?" "Please, Friklos, not all humans are the same. You are kind. You are different. I love you, my friend." The dragon rose, spreading his wings. He was ready to fly away, but stopped and looked back at the siren. Her eyes pleaded. "Very well, but never ask this of me again," he said, with a sigh. Gabriella climbed onto his back, clutching her seal skin tightly. Grasping the ridges along his neck, she held on as the dragon lifted into the sky, carrying the siren toward the ruined settlement. The dragon flew low above the water. His vast wings barely brushed the surface, and only when he descended closer did splashes rise and strike Gabriella's face. She laughed, pressing herself against him, feeling every powerful surge of his muscular body, instinctively avoiding the sharp spines along his back. Each movement was perfectly synchronized. Though there was danger in the flight, it brought her pleasure. She loved it. The dragon curved around the mountains, then climbed once more into the sky, and together they set off toward land. Gabriella gazed down in awe as they passed towering cliffs and jagged peaks. Her heart pounded. New place, new fate. And then, on the horizon, a new sight appeared. A small fisherman's island. It rose from bare stone, with only sparse vegetation clinging to its surface. Yet even on such poor ground, people had managed to grow vegetables and berries. They landed nearby, circling once more, and only then saw what had become of the island. The sight was heavy even for beings as strong and ancient as they were. Several dozen huts had burned almost to ash. The remains of livestock lay scattered along the paths, mixed with broken carts, shattered clay vessels, and fragments of collapsed buildings. Grain lay spilled beside charred outbuildings. At the center stood an old well, and it seemed to have become the final refuge of an elderly man, lying headfirst against its stone rim. The dragon touched down softly. Gabriella slid from his back and carefully approached the site of the tragedy. Holding her skin tied at her waist, she moved slowly, examining each body. Together, they counted 4 elderly women, 3 elderly men, and 5 young men. But the most terrible sight was 2 young women lying among them, swords still clutched in their hands. They had chosen death rather than slavery. They were killed mercilessly, for their courage alone. Gabriella lifted her head and looked at the dragon, then turned back to the fallen. "We cannot bury them all in the ground," she said quietly. "They must each have a resting place. I have seen how humans burn their dead, singing to their gods. I can sing for them. Perhaps their gods will hear me and take them in." The dragon snorted, as if about to protest, then lowered his head to her level. "None of them would show such mercy as you do, my friend." Gabriella only shrugged and leaned against his left foreleg. "Perhaps not, Friklos, but that does not mean we must become the same. These people were kind." She turned back toward the bodies, and then her gaze stopped. A small girl sat on the ground, covered in ash. She was shaking, crouched beside her mother's body, quietly crying. She had not noticed the siren. Her eyes were full of pain and despair as she pleaded through tears for her mother to wake. Gabriella approached slowly, stopping at a distance until the girl lifted her head and saw her. At first, the child recoiled in fear and ran toward the sea. Then she stopped, standing waist-deep in the water, staring at the siren with terror. "Do not be afraid, little one. I will not harm you," Gabriella said softly, holding her gaze. "Maybe you won't," the girl replied, trembling, "but I know who you are, and that frightens me." Gabriella smiled gently. Her eyes softened as she felt a fragile bond form with this small soul. The child had white hair, blue eyes, freckles, a small nose and mouth. Her hair had once been braided, but now it hung loose. "Oh, do not fear," Gabriella said quietly. "Sirens are the kindest beings in the world. If you do not anger them—" She raised an eyebrow with a faint smile. "You would not anger me, would you?" The girl shook her head. Fear still lingered, but it loosened its grip. She stepped out of the water, approached the siren, and wrapped her arms around her waist, pressing her face against her stomach. "You won't leave me, will you? I'm very scared to be alone. I've never been alone," the girl whispered. Gabriella embraced her and kissed her forehead, feeling the child's heart race beneath her hands. "I cannot take you with me," she said gently. "I live where humans cannot go, but I can return until others come for you." The girl tensed and began to cry silently. "I don't want other people. I'm afraid of them. I don't want them." Gabriella stroked her hair and held her close. "All right," she said softly. "We will find a way. Are you hungry?" The girl nodded, still clinging to her. "We must go back," Gabriella said, guiding her toward the fire pit. "We will find something for you there." They walked together, and even in the heart of this devastation, Gabriella knew she would not abandon the child. Something deep within her whispered that this small soul deserved a chance at life, even in a world like this. After some time, the dragon returned. He did not hurry. He laid a young deer beside them. Its body was still warm, and the scent of fresh meat filled the air. Without stopping, the dragon nudged the carcass toward the siren and the girl with his snout. "Here, eat," he said dryly, with a note of harsh practicality. "That little one will last you a long time." Gabriella turned to him in surprise. "But they don't eat raw meat, Friklos. Humans don't eat raw flesh. And even if they did, it spoils quickly. What use is such a large carcass if in 2 days it becomes dangerous? Humans get sick from this. Sometimes they even die. They call it poisoning." The dragon rolled his eyes and shook his head, as if trying to understand what was being demanded of him. He glanced back at the deer and, without hesitation, released a burst of flame. The carcass hissed and ignited. That's it, Gabriella. From here on, it's not our concern, he said sharply, turning away. You've already dragged me into something I don't understand. It's time for us to leave. You and me. He stepped back demonstratively and spread his wings. Gabriella kissed the girl, lowered her head, and climbed onto the dragon's back. As they took flight, they heard the child's cries and sobs echo across the shore. Tears streamed down the siren's face. The dragon's heart beat harder than usual. He left Gabriella at the siren's beach, a secluded place of white, fine sand enclosed by towering cliffs, unreachable by ships or boats. Here, the sirens lived beneath gentle sunlight, immersed in their thoughts and timeless existence. The dragon rose into the sky and flew toward his cave. Entering the dark, somber hollow of his home, he paused and glanced back. Beyond the horizon, the sun slowly sank, and the clouds thickened, heavy with coming rain. How will she survive there in the rain, the dragon thought, shaking himself as if to drive the thought away. Then he turned deeper into the cave, surrendering himself to darkness and silence. When night fully fell and the rain intensified, Gabriella could no longer endure it. She swam tirelessly back toward the ruined fisherman's village, haunted by the thought of the frightened child she had left behind. Near midnight, she reached the shore. Removing her sealskin, she tied it tightly around her waist and walked step by step through the ruins, calling the girl's name. At last, she found her beneath a surviving fragment of a storage wall and a piece of collapsed roof that barely shielded her from the rain. Gray sat there, hugging her knees, soaked through and shivering. The siren sat beside her and gently embraced her. She spread her skin on the ground and laid Gray upon it, then pressed herself close, shielding the child from the wind. Soon, Gray fell asleep, with her face buried against the siren's neck. Gabriella did not sleep. She knew she would have to summon people from a neighboring settlement to take the girl. By morning, the rain had stopped. Gabriella heard the familiar echo of wings nearby. The heavy snort told her it was Fryklos. She smiled. She knew him too well. He was never as indifferent as he pretended. Quietly freeing herself from Gray's embrace, Gabriella walked toward the dragon. He showed no surprise at seeing her, only tilted his head slightly. She ran to him. He lowered his head. She stroked his neck gently and kissed his left eye. The dragon closed it, accepting the gesture. "Will you take her?" Gabriella asked softly. "Will you save her, Fryklos?" "She belongs with humans," the dragon replied sharply, shaking his head. "But you came to see if she was alive, didn't you?" Gabriella countered, stamping her foot lightly and tossing her hair back. "Yes," he admitted, "because of you. You always get what you want. I am the most naive and foolish of dragons because you make me weak, and I hate it, and I regret it every time, and you know that." "She doesn't want to go to humans," Gabriella interrupted. "She said she would rather die. She doesn't trust them anymore. She's afraid of her own kind. I tried to persuade her, but she cries and begs me not to give her to them." As they argued, Gray approached them, dirty, exhausted, holding the sealskin. She bowed to the dragon, then handed the skin back to Gabriella. "Thank you," Gray said quietly, and turned to leave. The dragon watched her go. "Enough," he roared at last. "I know I will regret this more than anything before, but never look at me like that again. You are my weakness and my curse, Gabriella. Whatever happens next is on your conscience." He strode after the girl. She had reached her shelter and was about to sit when she froze, and stepped back. The dragon was enormous. She was still afraid. He looked at her, small, frightened, alone, with despair in her eyes. The same despair he once carried when he looked upon his mother's body, slain by humans for hunting, to feed her children. "I can take you with me," he said at last, "but you must be quiet. No chatter." Grey smiled and nodded. "I am too young to have a family," the dragon continued. "I don't know how this will work. My home is a dark, grey cave, but we'll find a way." The siren approached, holding her skin. Grey hugged the dragon's foreleg. He stiffened, unsure what to do. "We must go," Gabriella said. "People are coming by boat. I can hear them." The dragon lowered himself. Gabriella helped Grey climb onto his back, showing her where to hold. "Be careful," she warned softly. "His crest is sharp, and the spines are poisonous. Never grab their tips." The dragon rose and leapt into the sky. As they flew, Gabriella felt Grey trembling. "This will pass," she whispered. "The first flight is always the hardest." They passed above 6 boats filled with people. Faces turned upward in fear and wonder as the dragon flew by with a child and a siren on his back. At the siren's beach, Gabriella kissed Grey's cheek, untied the skin, and slipped into the water with her. The dragon flew on, high into the mountains. Grey clung tightly to his scales, pressing her bare feet against his armor. They reached a high mountain ledge where a cave opened halfway up its face. The dragon landed. Feeling the child hesitate, he shifted slightly. Inside the cave, it was dark. Stones and bones lay scattered beneath her feet. Gradually, her eyes adjusted. She saw the walls and the dragon's vast shadow. "Well," he said, turning to her, "this is it. Have you changed your mind?" "No," Grey answered firmly. "I will adapt." At dusk, the dragon lay down in one corner. Grey sat in another, cold and silent. "Come here, child," he said. He drew her close and covered her with the edge of his wing. Warmth surrounded her. Soon she slept. The dragon did not. When morning came, Grey woke to daylight. The dragon had not moved all night. "Thank you, Friklos," she said softly. "I must leave for a while," he replied. "Will you be gone long?" "I hear your stomach growling. I will get food." "Take me with you," she pleaded. The dragon paused. "We'll visit the fairies today," he said at last. "They have honey, berries, fruit, and clothes. What you're wearing must be discarded." Joy lit her face. When the dragon landed in the fairies' clearing, they rushed toward him in alarm, then scattered in panic at the sight of the child. A large pink butterfly landed nearby and transformed into a fairy with rose-colored hair and green eyes. "Friklos, have you lost your mind?" she cried. "Return the child to her parents." "I am her family now," the dragon replied. "You killed them," the fairy whispered in horror. Grey stepped forward and bowed. "No," the dragon said coldly. "Humans took them. Gabriella asked me to save her. And you, like a siren's obedient dog, do everything she asks of you." The fairy rolled her eyes dramatically, spreading her arms wide. While they were still arguing, other fairies approached Grey. They had large wings of many colors and big almond-shaped eyes. "Enough, Friklos. This is not the time to quarrel. Leave Grey with us for now, but when Olivia returns, all of us will be in serious trouble." Nye ended the dispute. "I will return later," the dragon said to Grey. Grey nodded in response, and the dragon flew away. All day long, the fairies took care of Grey. They bathed with her in the river, dressed her in a green dress that reached just below her knees, braided her hair into two plaits, weaving thin green ribbons into them. They laughed, played hide-and-seek, ate berries, and drank honey. When dusk began to fall, Friklos returned and took Grey with him, carrying a generous piece of white fabric. When they came back, Grey fell asleep beside the dragon, wrapped in white sheets that Friklos had made by tearing the fabric the fairies had given him. The next day, everything repeated itself. Later, the dragon began bringing the girl to the island of the sirens, where Gabriella played with her and taught her how to swim. At first, all the sirens were outraged, but gradually they accepted her as one of their own, just like all the ancient inhabitants of these lands. Every morning, the dragon flew off somewhere with Grey, leaving her with siren nannies or fairies while he went hunting. Friklos did not notice how the little girl became the center of his universe. Other dragons judged him, but Friklos never abandoned Grey. Time passed, seasons replaced one another. Dragons left these lands in search of refuge where humans did not exist, and Friklos understood that soon only he and old Malvaktan, the guardian of the sacred Mother Mountain, would remain. Friklos often flew to the Tusa lands, deep within the western impenetrable forests, where elves taught Grey to play the wooden flute and other musical instruments. Sometimes she stayed with the Tussas for several days, and Friklos knew she was completely safe there. The elves taught her archery, and soon she was hunting alongside the dragon. She liked hunting. She grew up, rejoicing in every day. The dragon loved and cherished Grey, adapting his cave to her needs. There was now a bed, furs underfoot, and enchanted lamps gifted by the fairies. Grey kept everything clean and orderly, and Friklos had to forget his habit of dragging prey into his dwelling. Grey owned a large wooden chest, a gift from the Tussas. It was red, with golden embossing and carvings depicting animals. Inside were many dresses given by fairies and Tussas. Gabriella and the other sirens gave Grey many pearl ornaments and beautiful, intricate shells. The dwarves crafted a silver mirror so polished that reflections in it were like those on the surface of the lake near the Tusa lands. They also made goblets, spoons, trays, and other necessary utensils. Friklos spared nothing for Grey and gave away much of his treasure of precious stones. He was so immersed in this girl that the outside world became distant and unimportant to him. Time flowed slowly for the dragon. Humans feared him no longer, and Grey seemed to grow with astonishing speed before his eyes. She became more a woman than a child, changing and forming into an adult. She was now a blue-eyed girl with long blonde braids reaching her thighs. Though slender, she was strong and well-muscled. Freckles covered her face, and the Tussas said they resembled stars. Grey spent hours flying above the sea on the dragon's back, leaning low enough to touch a Greenland whale as it surfaced for air. She laughed and played. She was happy. She was the only human who loved the dragon, and who was loved by him. Autumn painted everything in shades of yellow and red. The trees had almost completely shed their leaves, and the tall grasses had dried out, turning grey and pale. Rains became more frequent, and autumn had fully settled in. On one of those autumn days, the sun broke through and revived the world with bright colors. Grey awoke with a desire to go hunting and to visit the elves, with whom it was always joyful. She woke the sleeping dragon and began begging him to take her to them. Friklos did not resist much. He himself wished to hunt in the sea, diving into its deepest waters. Grey put on a blue dress, shortened to her knees for ease of movement, and leather boots gifted to her by the elf Alf. The elves were friends and fierce protectors of all ancient beings in these lands. They respected dragons and often convened councils attended by the keeper of the Mother Mountain. Friklos frequently descended to them together with Grey. The elves welcomed Grey warmly, despite her being human. They always showered her with attention and gifts. They taught her how to hunt, how to wield a sword and a spear, while the women taught her how to cook delicious meals and tried to teach her weaving. Grey stubbornly refused. She preferred hunting and began to show interest in smithing and forging. She became especially close with the elf Alf. He was wise and unobtrusive, yet very responsible for his young age. Alf was a fair-haired elf with shoulder-length hair, and Grey often hunted with him at the foot of the Mother Mountain. Friklos spread his wings, and they rose into the air. Grey laughed joyfully, feeling the wind in her hair as the dragon flew above the colorful forest. They landed in the elven clearing, where smiling faces greeted them. Seeing Grey, Alf rushed toward her happily. "Grey, I'm so glad to see you," he said, embracing her. "Today is the perfect day for hunting." "Yes, I've been waiting for it too," Grey replied, glowing with joy. Watching them, Friklos felt a quiet happiness. He knew Grey was in safe hands and could calmly depart for his hunt in the depths of the sea. "Be careful," he said to her before flying away. "Don't worry, I'm in good hands," Grey replied, waving goodbye. The dragon delivered Grey to the elves of the western forest and flew off to hunt at sea with Gabriella. Alf gathered arrows into his quiver and slung it over his back. He was the most handsome and intelligent youth of their tribe, yet not arrogant. Grey knew their people stood on the brink of extinction. Alf was tall and slender, with pale skin, sharp cheekbones, a small mouth, and a thin nose. The elves' homes were wooden and built in the trees, connected by rope bridges. Alf wore tight black trousers, a green hooded cloak, and brown boots. Seeing that Grey had come without a cloak, he brought her a grey one fastened with a leaf-shaped clasp so she would not grow cold. Together, they set off to hunt. Alf joked along the way, and Grey laughed. A new spear, gifted by Friklos, hung over her shoulder, along with a bow and arrows. The hunt began, and Alf, as always, demonstrated his mastery with the bow, striking target after target. Grey proved herself a skilled huntress as well, deftly handling both spear and bow. They spent a wonderful day gathering prey and enjoying each other's company. At that moment, one of the older men suddenly raised his head, as if hearing something. He said something to the others, and all three began scanning the area more carefully. Grey felt her heart beat faster. "We should go back and warn the others," Alf whispered, taking Grey by the hand. On their way back to camp, carrying 4 hares, they talked about everything and nothing. Grey felt happy and protected beside Alf. She knew she could always rely on him and her elven friends. As they neared the mountain, they circled it toward a stream, overgrown with bushes. Alf suddenly stopped and signaled Grey to be silent. They crouched, hiding in the bushes. Grey heard voices, then saw 3 men approaching the stream to fill their water skins. 2 were broad-shouldered and mature-looking. The third was lean, but tall, taller than the others. All 3 were red-haired. The 2 older men wore red beards, but the younger one had only the first traces of facial hair. He was young, yet very handsome. Grey could not take her eyes off him, and Alf noticed. Quiet, Grey, he whispered, gripping her hand. We don't know who they are. It could be dangerous. Grey nodded, trying to remain calm, yet her heart beat faster as she watched the red-haired youth. There was something in his gaze, calm and observant, tinged with a gentle sadness, that touched her soul. His presence awakened something new within her, something she had never felt before. Grey, he's human, Alf muttered. That's dangerous, he continued, hand on his bow. We don't know who they are or what they want. But they're just drinking water, Grey objected softly. Maybe they mean no harm. We can't risk it. Humans can be treacherous. Reluctantly, Grey followed Alf as they quietly retreated, leaving the men by the stream. She knew this would not be the last time she saw them, and something in her heart told her that this encounter would change her life. When darkness fell, Friklos came and took Grey home to their cave. He immediately sensed her mood, but Grey said nothing. She lay down beside the dragon in the center of the cave. He opened one eye, drew her beneath his wing, asked if everything was all right, and when she said it was, he fell asleep again. Grey only fell asleep near dawn. She awoke early the next morning, her thoughts returning to the moment by the stream. She could not banish the young man from her mind. Her heart raced whenever she remembered his gaze. She felt an unshakable need to see him again. Friklos, Grey called, take me to that mountain, to the place where we saw the men. Please. The dragon studied her, then silently nodded. You are stubborn as ever, he said, spreading his wings. But if this is your wish, I will grant it. They flew toward the mountain. Every minute of the flight weighed heavily on Grey. She thought only of him. Her heart beat faster with each imagined moment of seeing the red-haired youth again. When Friklos landed near the stream, Grey hurried forward. She carefully approached the place where they had seen the men the day before, hiding among the bushes. Hope and anxiety filled her heart. You're here alone? Someone asked suddenly, looming over her. Startled, Grey nearly fell into the stream, but managed to catch herself. Laughter sounded behind her. She turned and saw the same young man from the day before. The other two men were gone. As she stepped back, her boots slipped on the wet ground. She reached for her quiver. Don't be afraid, the stranger said. I won't hurt you. My name is Alvrik. He looked 17 or 19, with short red hair and blue eyes. A faint down shadowed his chin. He wore black leather trousers, a grey shirt, and black boots with a buckle. Arms crossed, he smiled at Grey. Who are you, and why are you here? This is Elven land, Grey said firmly. This is my father's land, Alrek's. All lands to the Great Water belong to him by right, he replied calmly. This is the land of the firstborn, dragons, fairies, elves. You are guests here, Grey said. Alvrik stopped smiling, studying her with genuine interest. Well then, he said, who are you? Grey pushed past him and walked away. Everyone has a name, he called after her. May I know yours? Without turning back, she answered, I am Grey. My name means dawn. She lifted her dress and ran into the forest. When she reached Alf's home beneath the oak, she collapsed to the ground. Alf rushed to her. Grey, what happened? People, Alf. They're very close. That boy, we saw him again. He says he is the son of the Jarl of these lands. Alf helped her to her feet, and together they climbed up to his home on the mountain. He gave her water and food. His face was dark, and his silence was heavy, difficult to break. When Friklos flew in to take Grey home, Alf warned him. "Be careful. Dragon hunters are growing bolder. They appear in these lands more and more often." After taking her home, the dragon forbade Grey to wander alone, even when she protested and tried to defend her boundaries. Friklos paid no attention to her words. There was only one thought in his mind: to leave these lands and take her far away. Grey firmly refused. For several days, the dragon would not allow Grey to descend from the mountain. She was constantly drawn to the forest and the sea, and though she tried to remain calm, thoughts of the Jarl's son would not leave her. He began to appear in her dreams, and she could no longer understand why she felt such a pull toward him. At last, after several days of persuasion, Friklos gave in. He carried her to the foot of the little mountain, warning her to be careful. And so Grey found herself once again by the stream. She had no desire to hunt. She sat down on a stone, wrapping herself in Alf's grey cloak, which smelled of the forest. Hours passed, yet her thoughts remained with Alvrik. Why was he in her mind so often now? A sound behind her interrupted her thoughts. She turned quickly and saw him. Alvrik stood before her in a silvery chainmail, resting his hand on a long spear. "I was waiting for you, Grey," he said. "I came here every day and waited for you." Grey sprang to her feet, throwing the cloak back. She wore leather trousers and a grey man's shirt, and her two long white braids, like twin serpents, rose and fell as she jumped, dropping along both sides of her body. Alvrik slowly laid the spear on the ground, straightening his hands to show that he meant her no harm. "Are you a witch?" Alvrik asked. Grey lowered her hands, which had already reached for the bowstring across her chest. "Why do you think so?" she asked. "Because I see you everywhere," he replied. "I see you in my dreams, and in every girl I meet." Grey flushed. She knew she was blushing. Warmth spread across her face, and she lowered her eyes. Alvrik stepped closer, and this time Grey did not retreat. He stood beside her, not daring to touch her, simply standing very close, studying her. "You won't run away again?" the young man asked. "No," Grey answered quietly. "Then, may I just sit beside you?" Alvrik asked. "Sit," Grey replied, gesturing toward the ground. They sat together and remained there for several hours, talking about everything in the world except people and other beings. They spoke of the stars and the sky, of the moon and the sun. They both enjoyed each other's chatter. Grey did not want to leave, but she knew Friklos would soon return, and this meeting would not end well. "You must go, Alvrik," she finally dared to ask. "Why? Why do you want me to leave?" the young man asked anxiously, looking at her. "Don't ask me, Alvrik, but you must leave immediately if you want us to meet again." "Of course I do." Alvrik jumped to his feet. Grey remained silent. Alvrik nodded in understanding. "Very well, I'll go. But promise me I'll see you again?" he asked nervously. "Yes, but only if you don't question me. Then we will meet again. I will come tomorrow when the sun rises." Grey waved her hand, pointing away. "Go now, Alvrik, please." Alvrik bowed to her, and then, unexpectedly for both himself and Grey, lightly touched her forehead with his lips in farewell. That was how his mother always bade him goodbye when he left home. Such an innocent gesture, yet both their hearts began to beat even faster. It stirred them deeply. He bent to pick up his spear, lifted it, winked, and walked away quickly. Grey watched him go, and a quiet ache settled in her heart. Soon Frickloss arrived and carried Grey back to their home, to their cave. Grey did not want to sleep. She waited for morning. Her thoughts were only of Alvrik. Tossing and turning on her bed, she finally fell asleep near dawn, and once again Alvrik came to her in her dreams. When she awoke, the sun was already high above the earth. Grey was deeply upset and began to beg Frickloss to take her to the elves. The dragon was unyielding at first, but when he saw Grey's tears, he relented and carried her to the elven lands, then flew off to see Gabriella. Grey ran to the foot of the little mountain, running with all her strength, afraid she would not be awaited. But as she approached the stream, she saw him. Alvrik stood there, watching her. He was neatly dressed and well-groomed, and instead of a spear, a basket of fruit stood beside him. He ran toward Grey and embraced her, and she did not resist. "This is for you, Grey," the young man said, gesturing toward the basket. "Thank you," Grey replied with a smile. Alvrik spread out a striped blanket that lay beneath the basket, and they sat down by the stream. The day was sunny and warm, and warmth and joy filled both their hearts as well. Leaning against one another, they talked and laughed all day, eating fruit and wishing the day would never end. As the day drew toward sunset, Grey again asked him to leave. This time he did not argue, but said he would be gone for several days. There was a great hunt awaiting him, one very important for his future. At the time, Grey did not understand what kind of hunt it would be. She did not know that Alvrik was preparing for a dragon hunt. Not long after his departure, Frickloss arrived, and they flew back to their cave. This time, Grey went to sleep happier than she had ever been in her life. Before bed, she tried on a new dress, sewn and embroidered by the hands of the elven women. It was red with small bouquets of wildflowers embroidered in gold thread. Grey admired herself in the mirror, trying on her jewelry. She felt like dancing. "Are you in love?" Frickloss asked, having watched Grey all evening. "What makes you think that?" Grey asked in return, a little nervously. "You are glowing, Grey," the dragon said, already half asleep, gazing toward the corner of the cave, set aside as Grey's sleeping place, where she admired herself in the mirror. Then he added, "Alf is a good boy. He would make a good husband. I just don't know how to give you to him." "No, Frickloss. Alf is just a friend to me. Don't even think about it," Grey snorted, tossing a necklace onto her bed of roughly hewn logs. "Well then, a friend is a friend," the dragon said, and closed his eyes. Grey undressed and wrapped herself in an old blanket, turning her back to the dragon and thinking about his words. She understood that if Frickloss learned about Alvrik, it would not end well for anyone. Fear and sadness settled over her. In the morning, the dragon flew away, and Grey remained lying in her bed. She simply lay there, her thoughts filled with Alvrik, when suddenly she heard a dragon's roar of such power as she had never heard before. Their mountain shook, and the entire valley stirred. The earth trembled. "Something has happened. Something terrible," Grey thought. Her heart pounded wildly. She could not find peace as she waited for Frickloss. He appeared soon after. He was furious. His rage had burst free. His chest burned, ready to unleash fire, yet he restrained himself, afraid of harming Grey. The spikes upon his head, usually lowered, were raised now, his eyes filled with flame. He paced the cave while Grey, terrified, pressed herself against the stone wall. When he finally calmed and stopped, Grey dared to approach him. She stroked him, embraced him, as best she could. "What happened, Friclos? I'm scared." "Malvactin is dead. They killed him, Grey. The Guardian is gone. Now I am Malvactin, the only one left. That means I must become the guardian of Mother Mountain, of her treasures and her gifts." Grey's heart tightened. People killed him?" she asked softly. "Yes, he went out hunting. They killed him at the foot of his own mountain, lured him with their livestock. I heard his cry for help, but when I arrived, he was already dead." The dragon tried to steady himself, but his body trembled violently with rage. "What will become of us, Friclos?" Grey asked, pressing her entire body against the dragon. "I don't know, Grey," the dragon replied, lowering his head to her feet. She stroked him and kissed him just below his right eye. Her heart was broken. Anxiety overwhelmed her. Fear bound her fragile body. Neither she nor the dragon slept that night. The dragon lay staring into nothingness while Grey sat beside him, constantly stroking him. Then several days passed, as if through a fog. No one ate, no one left the cave. Grey wept, and the dragon lay staring deep into the darkness of the cave. Each of them understood that things would never be as they had been before. Several days passed before the dragon finally managed to calm himself completely. He and Grey did not leave the mountain. He did not go hunting. And Grey, for a time, forgot her passions. She ate dried berries and drank honey, as the fairies had always treated her. Grey feared the future, but most of all she feared for the life of her beloved Friclos, who had named himself Malvactin of these lands. One evening the dragon rose and spoke. "I must be there, Grey. I must guard Mother Mountain. The people must not seize what lies within it. That would destroy all life here." Grey stepped forward and embraced the dragon. "I understand, Friclos. Of course you must go. Do as you must. I will manage." She fell silent for a moment, then continued, "I will go to the elves." "That will be best, Grey. Alf will take care of you," the dragon said, turning toward the cave's exit. Then, noticing he was leaving alone, he looked back. "Come, Grey. Come quickly. I will take you to the elves." As they rose into the sky, Grey understood that this might be their last flight together. Night had already fallen when the dragon brought her to the elves. He landed near Alf's home. The elves gathered, helping Grey down. They surrounded the dragon, asking one by one what would happen next, for they had heard Malvactin's final cry. "That is now my concern," the dragon answered. "Your concern is Grey. I entrust to you the most precious thing I have. Take care of her." The dragon bowed his great head before Alf. "She is now your charge, Tusser. Protect her." Alf nodded in agreement. The dragon rose into the night sky, illuminated by the bright glow of the moon and stars, and soon even his shadow vanished from sight. Annika, Alf's mother, took Grey into the house, fed her, and gave her clean clothes. Alf gave up his bed for her. Exhausted by grief and fear, Grey fell asleep. In the morning, she took her bow and arrows and went to the stream. Alf followed her, but Grey insisted on going alone. When Alf protested that he must protect her and that Friclos would eat him if anything happened, she firmly refused and went by herself. Alvric was waiting for her by the stream, just as handsome as before, dressed in festive clothes. Grey felt a little awkward, wearing men's clothing, the garments she found most comfortable. Annika had braided her hair and woven green ribbons into it. A quiver of arrows and her bow were visible on her back. Alvric ran to her, seized her in his arms, spun her around, pressing her to himself, then set her down and kissed her. Her head spun. I waited for you so much. I was here yesterday too, all day. But I knew you would come, Alvric said excitedly. I couldn't come, Alvric. Believe me, I couldn't, Grey replied, sitting down on the damp grass by the water. Something terrible happened. I simply couldn't. Are you all right? Alvric asked anxiously. He sat beside her, wrapped one arm around her shoulders, and rested her head against his. Yes, I'm all right, Grey sighed, trying to calm herself, though her emotions still broke through. A tragedy happened to my old friend. He is gone. She fell silent for a few moments, as if searching for words, but understood that the loss was so great that even words could not describe her pain. I'm so sorry, Grey, Alvric said, stroking her hair. His voice was gentle, yet firm, as though trying to support her. But I have good news. I want to take you with me. That's impossible, Alvric. Her voice grew quiet, despair tightening around her heart. I am a commoner, and you are a Jarl's son. They will never allow it. They will, Alvric exclaimed joyfully. I became a man a few days ago. I can choose my own wife now and act as I see fit. Really? Grey looked at him in astonishment. And what were you before? Alvric straightened proudly, his eyes shining. I killed a dragon. Oh no, Grey cried, leaping to her feet. Her heart exploded with rage and horror. She shoved him away, her face twisted with pain and fury, her hands clenched into fists. What have you done, Alvric? Her voice trembled with emotion. You have no idea what you've done. She shoved him again, her eyes filling with tears she could not hold back. Alvric did not understand. He stood before her, stunned, having expected joy and admiration, only to see disappointment and pain. You killed Malvacton, the guardian of Mother Mountain, Grey cried. Now Friklos is alone, and you think this is good news. You think I would be happy to hear you killed my friend? You have robbed us of peace and safety. Alvric did not know what to say. His world seemed to turn upside down. Pride and joy were replaced by fear and shame. I didn't know, Grey. I didn't know, he said weakly. But dragons are dangerous. You didn't know because you didn't want to know, she shouted. You thought only of yourself, of your glory, and now you have brought disaster upon us all. But Grey, it was a dragon, the most dangerous creature in these lands, Alvric protested, but her gaze stopped him. He understood his words no longer mattered. The most dangerous creatures in these lands are people, Grey replied coldly, bitterness in her eyes. Why do you defend them then? Don't you know they are dangerous? Alvric insisted. Grey, wounded and disappointed, lifted her bow and arrows, preparing to leave. That's it. I'm leaving, Alvric, she said, firmly, turning her back on him. I'm leaving, and we will never see each other again. Alvric could not allow that. He grabbed her arm and pulled her to himself so tightly she felt her bones grind. She struggled to break free, but his grip was unyielding. No, Grey, I will never let you go. Never. I will follow you wherever you go. I cannot live without you any more. At last, Grey slipped from his grasp, slung her bow and arrows over her shoulder, and without another word, fled. She ran with all her strength, her heart tearing apart with every step. Tears blurred her vision. She stumbled and fell, rose again, and kept running, a crushing weight in her chest. Lost in emotion, she did not feel that someone was following her. It was Alvric. He followed closely, too close to ignore. When they reached the settlement of the Tussers, he hid among the trees, watching her. Only then did he realize that Grey truly lived among them, among those he had always considered enemies. Alvric understood that her story was not what he had imagined. He decided that no matter the cost, he would take her with him. He returned to his camp beyond the little mountain, where his wife and his herd awaited him. He needed to prepare for battle. Tomorrow they would march against the elves, and he would hesitate no longer. That entire night, his warriors prepared in silence, cleaning their weapons. Each of them felt that something momentous was drawing near. In the morning, as the sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, Alvric led his group of warriors into the forest. The woods they moved through were still and quiet, the only sound the echo of birdsong through the dense trees. All followed him in silence, knowing none had the right to question where or why they were going. Everyone understood. The battle ahead would be fierce, and even the elves' indomitable spirit could not stop this march. Alvric was known for his resolve, yet even he felt a shadow of unease at the thought of what awaited them. The elves were not merely wise and ancient warriors, they were a people of incredible agility and mastery with the bow. They never missed their mark and never yielded. 100 brave warriors marched with Alvric, each ready to go to the end for the sake of their mission. They carried their own weapons, but also understood that their true strength lay in unity. As they approached the elven settlement, vigilant sentries in the forest shadows spotted them and quickly sounded the alarm. The strong blast of a horn announced the beginning of another clash. Alvric's warriors quickly surrounded the elf settlement, ready for combat, yet the situation remained shrouded in uncertainty. Tension hung in the air. Each person knew this could be more than just a fight. It could be a turning point that changed everything. Between the trees and under the sky, now tinged with the pink of dawn, sharp arrow tips gleamed, poised to fly at a moment's notice. At that moment, Grey was descending the rope ladder from her home. Her steps were quick and practiced, but the horn's sudden blast of danger made her heart clench with fear. She leapt from the last rung, nearly twisting her ankle, and quickened her pace. Anxiety gripped her as she saw the elves, without waiting for orders, descending from their wooden homes. Bows were already in their hands, strings drawn, ready to release arrows at any threat. Even women and children did not hesitate, skillfully preparing for defense. Alf, standing at the edge, saw her seize her spear when he tossed it to her and move like the wind toward the group. Her steps were confident, though her heart raced as if on fire, and she did not falter. When they reached their positions, Alvric's warriors emerged from the forest. Each was armed, ready to strike. Some even aimed arrows directly at the elves. Grey's heart pounded so fiercely it felt as though it would burst from her chest. All fell silent when one of the men stepped forward and addressed the elves. "I do not intend to fight you. Return what you stole and live in peace." Grey recognized Alvric, and a flame of fury ignited within her. Anger and rage surged through her to her fingertips. Clutching her spear, she tried to break through the wall of elves. They, however, pressed together even tighter, resolute in not letting her pass. At that moment, the leader of the Tusas, Olaf, stepped forward. A tall, slender elf with long, silvery hair cascading to his shoulders. He was remarkably calm, his sharp ears peeked through his straight hair. Without raising his bow, he addressed Alvric quietly. "There is nothing of yours here. Leave. We seek no war." But Alvric would not relent. "No, there is. The girl Grey, you have taken her." Olaf looked at him in surprise, but responded even more firmly, "Grey is no captive. She is a guest and our friend. We do not hold anyone by force, human, but we will protect her as our own. She is entrusted to us, our friend, and her protection is our duty." Alvric clenched his fists, his face pale with rage. "Either give her to us, the humans, or there will be war," he declared, unwilling to yield. Grey gathered her strength and looked at her friends standing beside her. Behind them were their families, women, and children. She knew that even if they won this battle, revenge from the Jarl for his son, for all the blood that would be shed, could not be avoided. She looked Alvric in the eyes and said, without hesitation, "Very well, I will go with you, but on one condition. You swear that you will never come here again." Alvric ground his teeth in anger, but answered resolutely, "I swear it." That word was all that needed to be said. Alf approached Grey, his face filled with worry and deep concern. He shook his head, silently objecting, yet she felt his support. She also understood that everything that followed would be a difficult trial for all. "What have you done, Grey?" Alf grasped her hand, as if trying to hold back what could not be undone. His face was twisted in despair and disappointment. "I asked you not to associate with humans, not to do this." Grey withdrew her hand from his grasp, feeling the gaze of a friend who had long been her support. She drew in a deep breath, seeking the strength to explain. Each word seemed heavy, as if the very ground beneath her held her on the brink. "I know, Alf. It is too late to think about that now." Her voice was firm, though her soul ached. "I must go. You must live. You must exist." Grey took a step back, meeting his gaze, silently affirming her words. "This is better for everyone." Alf clenched his teeth, as if that could help him understand what he could not accept. He stepped toward her, his hands reaching out not to harm, but to protect, trying once more to keep her near, not letting go. "No, Grey, I can protect you. I beg you. Hear me. Friklos will not abandon you. He will find you. All this will be in vain," he said, nearly crying with fear and anger, reaching for her shoulder, but she recoiled. "No, Alf." Her gaze was ice-cold. "Friklos is already Malvactan. He must guard Mother Mountain. My choice is not yours. I have made it. Tell him it is my decision, to be with humans. The bloodshed must end." I close my eyes, as if trying to forget the heartache I bear. "This is better for everyone. Do not seek me, and Malvactan should not seek. It is my choice." Her words, like a cold wind, chilled the air. She turned her back on her friend, her steps leading to another, Alvric. He stood at a distance, watching. His warriors never took their eyes off them, and with each step they drew closer, waiting for the signal. The Tussers, alert and ready, drew their bowstrings tighter, yet remained still, watching Grey's decision. When she reached Alvric, he extended his hand to her, capturing her not only physically, but with his heart. He took her hand, drew her close, and said, without taking his eyes from the elves, "You are mine from now and forever. You are not a slave, Grey, but I will always follow you, for without you, I am nothing." His words left no room for doubt. Turning his back to the elves, he walked resolutely between his warriors, ignoring their stares. This was the moment he knew there was no turning back. Grey remained silent. Her heart was empty, yet raced wildly. A part of her soul had died forever, and this was not the path she had imagined for her happiness. She looked at Alvric, unsure if she was ready to live as he wished. She could hardly believe she was following him. It was not the path she had envisioned, but there was no other way. Everything had already been decided. When the fairies brought news to the dragon about what had happened, that Grey had chosen to leave her people with the humans, they knew it would not be simple. The winged messengers carried every word, every detail of what the elves had reported. The dragon's rage was unleashed. His fury was so immense that even the earth trembled beneath it. The fairies, who delivered the news, dared not stay near him. They fled, for the dragon's roar that shattered the sky was unmatched in its terror. Days passed, and even Mother Mountain shuddered beneath the dragon's roar. The entire forest heard the terrifying sounds, filled with bitterness and pain. Every stone that fell from the mountain bore witness to unspeakable grief. These were the dragon's tears, carrying pain and disappointment. Rocks cascaded from the mountainside in such quantity that the earth shimmered with a pale blue glow. These were tears, yet no one dared touch them. They were sacred, perhaps carrying more than mere sorrow. The dragon's stones of tears remained, silent witnesses to the tragedy that was only beginning.